For those of you who don't know, I'm your host, Colin Lake. I'm also the president and founder of Developing the Next Leaders. So Developing the Next Leaders is a firm on a mission to help salespeople, sales executives, sales teams, sales organizations love what they do. And you say, well, how do you do that, Colin? We help people be better at connecting with and communicating their value with their clients, because we've learned that when you're really good at something and you're really able to help people solve for their issues, you tend to be in love with your career. You never feel like you're working. And so from a logistics perspective, although we say we're the 7 Minutes to Better Selling podcast, we are about, say, 8 to 12 minutes on a live conversation. And then we go back to the editing floor, pull out the pearls of wisdom, and we put that out for all the world to see. So today we have a recap show, and I have my good friend, Simon, the podcast producer, showrunner, and altogether excellence in things digital and creative. So Simon, thanks for joining us.
I thank you so much, Colin. That was a very good introduction.
Thank you. And I always love these ones, Simon. It gives you and I a chance to talk,
Yeah.
like on this level versus, like the other like logistic stuff that we tend to talk about more often. So again, thanks for spending time here.
Yeah, thanks for invitation, Colin, and congratulations for your season 2. I mean, I know it's very challenging to be consistent. This is probably your episode number 31 or 32. So you have been doing absolutely great, and everyone loved this podcast. I'm not going to take a lot of your time because I see you've had some of the absolutely amazing people from the sales ecosystem in past 3 to 4 episodes. And to start with, you recently had Jason Mangler, who talked about how you can go to the next step and how you can take your team to the next step, right? Would you like to add and do a quick recap from that episode?
Yes. So Jason Mangler is the head of sales for Sartorius. Sartorius, they have an extraordinarily interesting business model, and Jason leads the sales team. So Jason and I are longtime friends. I've known him for 25 plus years, and he has done some amazing things in the sales world, in a number of different places in the sales world, but specifically with technology. And so he does a really, really good job at like getting sales teams to believe in something that they wouldn't have or couldn't have otherwise. So I think a lot of Jason Mangler. So one of the things that he talked about, we had a few different points to the discussion, but one of the things he talked about is how do I get a client to take the next step in the sales process? And so that, of course, plagues the sales industry today. Like, how do I get people to, instead of telling me it looks good, they'll take a look at it, how do I get them to the next step? And so he said two things. The first thing he said is you have to understand their current financial situation. Like, do they have the capability to move forward in the process? And so that has lots of meanings depending on what you sell. And the first meaning it has, like, you truly do have to understand their financial situation. But bigger than that, his bigger point was you have to understand what ultimately motivates someone to take the next step. And many times we think our product is what's going to help them make that next step. We think because our product is better than the current one they're using, or they don't have a product and they need our product. But that's not really the issue. The issue is, do what you do or what you have solve for the things that they actually care the most about? And so that leads to point two, what Jason said is, once you understand their financial situation, then you have to help them understand how it does, in fact, benefit them. And he said something really noteworthy. And the point was, Simon, he said, you can't tell them what you think is most important, meaning you need this because you have to say to them, why do you think you need this? And how would it impact you? And if you did use it, like, how would that make you feel? And when people are starting to answer those things and talk about those things, that's when you ultimately have the platform to help them take the next steps and help them, maybe use your product, to use a salesman's terminology. So I thought Jason did a wonderful job. I don't know if you remember that call or that podcast specifically, but I thought those points on how to help people take the next steps are really good. So first one is understand like where they are in the process and understand what they need to see, what they need to believe in order to take the next steps, not you telling them what to do.
Wow, absolutely great summarized, Colin. And one thing that I'll take away on a lighter note from this summary is that you said you have been friends with Jason for 25 years. That's probably before even I was born. All right, now let's move to the next podcast that you did with Tim, which was a really long one, and he talked about how you can take away from any of the discussions that you get in. Right? What are your thoughts from Tim getting on the podcast?
Well, Tim's another guy I've known for a very long time. We
Don't tell
spent
here this time.
yes. So um, Tim has been a mentor of mine for years. Interestingly, he was my boss for a long time. And then through like professional changes and things happening in people's lives and careers, he then worked under me. I was at a different firm and he worked under me. And I would tell you, one of the great things about Tim Seifert, and I didn't say this on that in that conversation, is he was as influential and as inspirational as my boss or my leader as he was when he was reporting to me. What a wonderful thing to say about someone, and something I admire so greatly about Tim. But two things from Tim's. First thing he said is, "I stand on the shoulders of giants." Tim leads a Fortune 500 company. He leads the entire sales and distribution effort for this company. He is, he may even have a thousand people reporting up to him. If not, it's
Wow.
like 500, 800 people reporting up through him. He is a monster job. And he says, I got here because I stand on the shoulders of giants. He says, I'm constantly paying attention to the people who came before me and who did it before me and asking them if they were back in my shoes today, what would they be doing to better their people? And Tim's always thinking that way is how do I better my people? If I better my people, then like my job gets so much easier. So I thought that was really, really good. And then the second thing Tim said is we have to change our relationship with hard. And Simon, what he meant specifically is like a lot of times we think things are hard, like calling a client who might hang up on us. We think that's hard to do. And what he was suggesting is, in the grand scheme of things, that's not really that hard to do. You know what I mean? Like getting told no over the phone isn't that big a deal. And so if we change our relationship with that, we'll tend to approach the situation with a lot better of an attitude. Like I come in this with a big smile, expecting the best. And the best happens more often when you go into that versus I'm nervous, I'm afraid, I'm going into this fearful that they're going to hang up on me. And then that actually comes to fruition. Like the worst happens because I expect the worst. And so Tim said, if you change your relationship with hard, like things that you perceive to be hard, to say, you know what? I don't have to do that. I get to do that. And if I get to do it, I go into it with this positive attitude, this like sense of enthusiasm, Simon. And then I
Mhm.
bring that to the equation. And people tend to do the things that you're asking them to do, which is maybe meet with you or take the next steps to pull back into Jason's conversation. So I think the world of Tim, and I was really grateful for him spending all that time.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. And just in case you want to go ahead and watch all that podcast, you can go to this developingnextleaders.com/podcast and you will find all the episodes over there. Now, that brings me, Colin, to our final recap of the episode. That is by Kevin. Kevin did the new season for you, and he inaugurated the new season, and he was talking about how you can go and self-cure yourself, right? And how to be motivated to win each day. That was a really good episode. And how would you like to summarize that?
Simon, I think we'll have to talk about this offline, but I think that is the highest watched episode we've ever done.
Oh,
I
really?
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what, and that's already, we've that's the
Mm-hmm.
most recent one, and I believe it's the one that's been most watched, or most downloaded and
Wow.
people viewed. And what's so interesting about that is, you know, as you progress, as you do 30 plus episodes, you tend to build a follower base. So you'd expect that to some extent. But I really love what we're doing in season two. And thanks to you for all of the direction on this one. But season two on selling yourself, the hardest person to sell is me. Like I have to convince myself to do these things every day in order to be a really successful salesperson. And so Kevin came on. Kevin is my nephew, and Kevin is he's in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
He had a bout or difficulty with drugs and alcohol in his life, and he was in a very, very difficult spot. And he has come from literally the bottom of the barrel all the way up to a wonderful place in his life where he's married, he's expecting a child, he's got a wonderful position for a large insurance company, a global insurance company, and he's doing great things for them. His clients love him, his friends love him. He's really in a wonderful place. And the thing that he said, Simon, you just referred to it, is he says, I have to win each day. Every day I wake up, I say, what do I need to do to win today? How cool is that? Like that, I just have one thing on mind: win today. And he says, hey, I wake up. First thing, I'm grateful. I'm thankful for a list of things. I list those things. That puts me off on a really good step, and I'm really setting myself up for a position of things that I need to do in order to win today. He says, don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of failure. Um, be afraid. Be afraid of winning in things that don't matter.
Wow.
How freaking good is that, Simon? Don't you love that? Don't be afraid of failure. Be afraid of winning at things that don't matter. And so that's this idea of like, how do I win today? Then make sure, okay, what's that list look like? Is it in fact the stuff that's most important? And what things am I doing to execute really well in that? Don't worry about failing at them, but worry about just succeeding at the things that really, really matter. So I thought Kevin was a wonderful guest, so well prepared, so articulate in sharing his story, and I was grateful for him getting us kicked off in season 2. And Simon, by the way, that reminds me, we were supposed to have Jimmy Pomerantz today, Jimmy P. For
Mm-hmm.
those who are dialed in expecting him. As many of you know, on the east coast of Florida, they're getting a big storm. That big storm has put Jimmy in a position where he can't get on the call. He let me know last night. So we wish Jimmy well and his family well, and make sure his house is safe. So he'll be on in a couple of weeks, and I look forward to that. So Simon, what else do we have in terms of wrap up thoughts? And then we'll let the listeners go back to their day and get them to sell them the way they need to.
I think the very first thing to note is definitely is this season 2 that we have been talking about, and also that we have started streaming this episode also on LinkedIn, so we get another at least 5 to 6,000 people joining us today. That's our new thing. If you're joining us LinkedIn for the very first time, you can find all the past podcasts that have dropped in the banner. Having said that, I think, Colin, that's all we have to wrap, and we'll see you in about a couple of more weeks.
Yes. Simon, thank you for spending some time with us. Everyone, thanks for spending all of your valuable time with Simon and I. And Simon, you want to do it in unison? Good selling,
Good
everybody.
selling, everyone.